Welcome to the Service to Civvy podcast, the only podcast where we talk about what it's like to actually leave the armed forces. Today's guest is Rachel Webb. Rachel is the Chief Security Officer, Risk Officer at the Key Holding Company. I had to get that right. I've been practicing all day, Rachel, and I nearly got it wrong. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. You're the first female guest I've managed to convince to come on. So, congratulations. And yay for me for actually finally convincing a female to come on. Rachel, for those that don't know you, please give us a little bit of a look back on your military service.
Yeah, certainly. Was a little time ago, actually. I've been out for just over 10 years now, but I did just over 12 years with the Intelligence Corps.
Okay.
I served, look back with very, very fond memories. Served predominantly in Germany and Northern Ireland and a little bit of time in Cyprus.
Was that a commissioned role?
No, non-commissioned.
Non-commissioned. What rank did you leave at?
Staff Sergeant.
Staffy. Nice. So 12 years left as a staffy in call. So what I'd like to do, Rachel, to start off with is just to take you back to maybe the point where you realised that you wanted to get out. Was there something that happened, you know, promotion, anything that made you think, that's it, I'm done? Because 12 years, staff sergeant, obviously motoring along, doing quite nicely, half pension point as well. Maybe that was a factor. So can you just give us an insight into that?
Yeah, I was really enjoying it as well. I had a fantastic time. I was getting lots of experience, had lots of fun. Personal life got in the way for me, and I had a young son already, and was in quite a new relationship. I'd been in a partnership for 4 years, and we wanted to get married, have another child, and we'd spent those 4 years on different continents. Within the Intelligence Corps, it's quite normal that you get posted every 2 years, and I'd specialised during that time, like you said, flown, been quite successful in my postings, and I asked to stay. I said, just give me a quiet job, an office job. I'd like to stay in the base, just solidify a couple of years with my partner, get married, and they were adamant that I needed to deploy, which would have left my young son by himself. So I felt I had no choice, unfortunately, but to leave.
Okay, was that a resourcing issue in the Inc Corps, Rachel, for your specialisation, or?
No, I was moving away from the specialisation. So
Okay.
It was a case of, if you want to progress in your career, your next step is WOE, and you need to go and get operational experience away from my specialisation,
Yeah.
which I didn't agree with. I was very much come on, we don't all need to go to Afghan.
Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, it was I'd done some deployments already, and it was just a case of I go to Bulford, I go mainstream, or I go and see what's out in the civilian world.
Yeah. Okay. So you sign off then. How long did it take you from having that conversation and cementing in your mind that really was it, to actually going on to JPA and signing off?
Yeah, it's a nervous time, isn't it? It's a scary time. But I had those personal motivations. I had a young son who, the idea of being at home, spending small time with him, was quite exciting. So it was a bit flash to bang, if I'm honest.
Okay. Good. So
Yes.
you pulled a pin, 7 steps to heaven or whatever they call it. Did you know what you were going to do when you left? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do?
I didn't know what I wanted to do, and with hindsight, I was blind, absolutely blind as to what I was walking into. And in fact, the next couple of years just showed, how little knowledge I had of what was out there. I sort of did the circuit, which is quite normal for Inc Corps when they leave, little bits here and there. And I didn't actually fall into my first civilian role until about 3 years after leaving a proper, fully what I would call civilianized role
Yeah.
about 3 years after leaving.
So what did you do during resettlement then during that 12 months? Did you make use of CTP and, learning credits and all that stuff?
Yeah, I thought I did. So I did the ILM, the leadership and management. I don't know if it's still kicking about now, but I did that then, that qualification, whilst I was still serving, which was fantastic, without even knowing that I was getting out. And I also started my masters as well, which has served me really, really well. But I would put a little note on that it only really helps if you're academically driven and personally motivated. I've had people, my husband's left, who didn't go down that route, and he's been just as successful. But it really worked for me anyway. The master's piece, the resettlement stuff, I did do everything that was on offer. Can't say that it really helped me. Unfortunately, I found it very generic. It was for all service lines. It was for all ranks. It didn't really help some of the background that I'd had from Incore and where I was particularly looking. So yeah, not a great experience, I'm afraid.
No, it's interesting you say, Rachel, you're not the first person to say that process has felt, generic and not really. I mean, I see it myself. I speak to a lot of service leavers who are doing project management because I work in quality management, and I champion quality management, and I see that there's the input into project management, and a lot of service leavers don't know what quality is. They don't know about ISO and all that sort of stuff. And when I speak to them, I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm project management, project management. And I remember many years ago when I was getting out, there was a drive on Craftsman. So you could go and do a 4-week plumbing course, a 4-week plastering course,
Yes,
and everybody was doing it,
exactly.
you know.
Yeah.
And I looked at that because when I was getting out, I was like, I was already from before I joined the military, I was already a time served bricklayer. I did a full apprenticeship when I left school, and I knew there's no way you can become a plumber in 4 weeks or a plasterer in 4 weeks. They could give you the basics, but it's not, So I kind of, but my point being, everybody was pushed or, you know, guided down the same pathway. And I'm not really sure how that CTP system works, whether they have quotas to fill from organizations that they speak to who say, oh, there's a demand for this or that. I just feel that some service leavers would do well to step outside a little bit and do their own research as to what's out there, rather than just relying on those briefings.
For sure. I mean, it's the one bit of advice that I always give anybody that asks me now when they're talking about leaving, what can I do? And it is just research, network, just go out, spend a bit of time in those businesses, if that's half a day, or just try and really immerse yourself in the culture, the way they look at it, because there's just no way that you're prepared.
Yeah.
There's nothing they can give you. And of course, with the CTP stuff, and you say it was a generic route that everyone got pushed down, they had no idea what to do with a female. They couldn't push me.
Really?
They felt like they couldn't push me towards the plumbing or any of the trade routes that were there. Not that I was interested in doing them, but there certainly wasn't the idea of this female ink or lever, that is the route that she should go. It was, yeah, they were quite lost.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you should say ink core lever because I only have one interaction with the ink core, and I'll speak to you about that after. Um, but yeah, in all the years I served, I hardly ever came across the ink core, so I can
Yeah, it's a
imagine for
really small
those.
regiment.
Yeah. For those people who are dealing with service leavers and they see, RLC. I was RLC cap badge. They'll see plenty of RLC coming through. They'll see plenty of infanteers coming through, and signals and those kind of cap badges. And then Incore turns up, and even I'd be like, what?
Well, it's the same with AGC or anybody from the veterinary corps, or any of
Yeah,
those,
yeah,
even the police. You turn up and they say, well, you must clearly want to go and take your experience and go and be civilian police or go and
Yeah.
work in
Yeah.
intelligence in a civilian world. And yes, there's this feeling of, okay, I've just spent 12 years doing something in my career, maybe I should follow it on. But actually, the difference between military intelligence and civilian intelligence is incredibly stark. There's
Yeah.
huge differences. And the idea of just being able to walk out of one into the other isn't something that CTP should be encouraging anyway, because that's not what happens in industry. Actually, in industry, what I found out really quite quickly is that the other ranks positions, if you like, in the intelligence world, they're being given to the undergrads, those that have studied politics and geopoliticals and have
Yeah.
foreign
Yeah.
languages under their belt. And it was a very different world to what
Yeah.
I've been doing the last 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've signed off. You've done your CTP stuff. You're coming towards the end. You've de-kitting. What are you feeling as that day draws closer? Because people do leave the military, and everybody leaves at some point. But while we're in, it's a massive safety net. You get paid, you get fed, you get told what to do, where to go. You don't have to think too much really on the practical side of things. Your job, of course. So what was it like knowing that familiarity was slowly, going to be taken away from you, and the days coming where that's it, you're out the gate and you're not going back in?
Yeah, do you know, I was in a really fortunate position in that I was in a relationship with somebody else that was still serving. So I wasn't the main breadwinner or
Right.
didn't need to be the main breadwinner to say.
Yeah.
So, and I also left at the halfway point, which I get is very different to somebody who has been in for 22, 24 years plus. So I felt like I was still young enough, fresh enough to potentially start again if I needed to, without that financial pressure as well. So I was in a really fortunate position that I understand that lots aren't. And again, it's without, when I do speak to especially Incal people, I always say that the difference between leaving at 12 years and 24 years, from a knowledge perspective, I don't think you gain much during that time.
Right.
And leaving early does set you up much better for a whole new career in Civvy Street.
So you're feeling quite relaxed then? You're happy with where you're going? Have you secured a role? I know you said
Yeah,
it was a few years till you got you felt like you're in a proper role, but you secured something?
yeah. So like I said, I was working the circuit a little bit on some bits and bobs, but the first proper full civilian role that I secured, I actually took a position, deliberately sought a position that was a few steps down the ladder than what I thought I could do. And again, I was able to do that because of the financial situation we were in. I was not the only person bringing the money home. So I wasn't applying for jobs that I thought a staff sergeant in the Ink Corps that had served for 12 years should necessarily be going for. In fact, the first job that I got, it was with the bank, was for an analyst position, the same job I was doing as a Lance Jack.
Right.
And I did it deliberately to take that fear away. I sort of opted out of that question of, is somebody going to see me as a credible manager? Is somebody going to see me as a credible leader or a professional, an expert in my area, knowing full well that I have no experience in the commercial world? So I took a job that essentially I knew I could do really easily. And it turned out to work really well for me, because what it meant was that every year I changed job, I changed position, or I got promoted, which is how I've managed to get to where I am today, really.
When you talk to your peers, do you find that there's a lot of self-imposed pressure to go for a certain job title and to earn a certain salary straight out of the gate?
Yes, I absolutely do. I think so, and it's always interesting when I speak to male leaders compared to female leaders as well, because I find that female leaders will automatically feel that they are not good enough for those levels that they could go into. But I do speak to a lot of service leavers who feel like they, not just from a financial perspective, there's some that say, I don't need to earn this money, but I don't feel like it is a credible step. There's such a stigma about leaving, isn't there? There's such a, you've done amazing and you're now going to carry on and go and do something amazing, or you're just going to take a retirement job. There is a lot of pressure. Yeah, I hear that a lot.
And
And
have you
have you
suffered with
suffered with
imposter
imposter?
syndrome at all since getting
Uh,
out?
yes, I talk about imposter syndrome quite a lot, especially when I'm invited to speak for International Women's Day every year and stuff like that. It is something that is talked about more for females than it is males, but I understand that males get imposter syndrome just as much. I am now at the point where if I'm not getting imposter syndrome, I don't think I'm challenging myself sufficiently. I'm trying to very much change the narrative on imposter syndrome in that it is actually, am I feeling uncomfortable? And feeling uncomfortable means I'm pushing myself, and that's the place I want to be. I want to be challenging myself. I want to be pushing myself. I want to be in an area of, gosh, can I be doing this with my eyes closed, or do I need to work hard? Do I need to keep driving to be good at this? And that's where I want to be. So yes, I do have imposter syndrome and I do embrace it.
That's really interesting. You're the first person I've heard say that they embrace it and they actually use it, as a motivator to actually self-check. I
Not
must be
going
doing it.
away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm never going to stop getting imposter syndrome. And 10 years ago, it would be I would walk into a room and people would thought I was there to make the coffees or take the notes. It would take a while for me to go, well, actually, this is my experience and I'm here because I have the credit. I'm in a wonderful position where that's not the case anymore. I have a seat at the table, which is fantastic. So
yeah,
the imposter
yeah.
syndrome is less about people in the room acknowledging my expertise, and it's more about what's going on in my own head. And yeah, if I'm not feeling it, then I'm not doing something right.
So what's it
So
been
what's
like
it
then,
been like
going
then
from
going from
being in a unit,
being in a
you
unit,
know,
you know,
being close knit,
being close?
military unit, to going back to working with civvies?
It's a great question, and I think it's really different in the intelligence corps. We move differently to other regiments, so you would move into, your postings would be individual, and they're every 2 years. So every 2 years you would get up and you'd be in a new team and you'd start again. And whilst it's a really small regiment and a lot of people know each other, it's not that same unit camaraderie, I think, as what you get with teeth arms, etc. when the units move together. What is it like in the civilian world? I personally prefer it. I feel, and I don't know whether this is as a female thing or not, but I feel that I am supported better in the civilian world than I was in the military world. You have the camaraderie, you have the great things you look back at, but from a career perspective, I am doing better in the civilian world than I did in the military.
And what about your colleagues? Do they like ask you about what you were doing in service? Do they look at you slightly differently? Is there any of that you still get, or is it like, that's Rachel? Oh, she's here. But did you know she used to be in the army as well? Do you get any of
Yeah,
that?
I think it's supported quite a lot. The businesses that I've been in all have great veteran programs.
Right. Yeah.
So you are looked upon really fondly as part of that, as having given your time of service. I've never had anything but love for it. So yeah, it is. It's always celebrated. I mean, I've been out a while now. I'll be very surprised if anybody looks at me and go, "Oh, she used to serve." But back at the time, certainly my first job with the bank, the only reason why I got that job was that the hiring manager was an ex-service person themselves,
Okay.
and they could translate my CV. They saw the potential in the things I'd done in the job that was required, because it certainly didn't say that on paper. So it was a great use that I had people who understood that. And again, back to that advice of networking and relationships. reach out to those people who understand where you're coming from, because it's so important, and it will make you feel like you haven't lived on a separate planet for the time beforehand, because they are very different worlds.
You mentioned there your CV, Rachel, and that the colleague in the bank was able to translate what was on your
Yeah.
CV. So I'm assuming it was, what I see quite often, a very military terminology heavy CV. Did you consider getting any help with that, or did you just think you were going to rely on, the network, the contacts, and just take it from there? Is it
I
something you
didn't
would have done
rely on
differently?
Definitely. I didn't rely on the network and the contacts. Nobody gave me that advice. So I hadn't done any of that networking. I haven't done any of the building the relationships. And I haven't looked at that CV for a long time, but I can imagine it's absolute drivel compared to what I would expect to see now. Just acronyms and pointless information all over the
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
Football here, and I went skied there, and I worked in this unit here, and here's 10 letters for you. Yeah,
yeah,
absolute
yeah.
rubbish. But it is, I know you must hear this so often on the podcast, but it is all about the soft skills. It's all about the stuff around the letters and the numbers. It's all about the working under pressure. It's all working about the team. It's all the integrity and the trust side of it. They really don't build people like that in Civvy Street. They really
Yeah,
don't build people with the same values, even from the leadership and management side. There are so many accidental leaders in the civilian world, so
yeah,
many. And just being able to prove that you go under this regular testing of how to be a better manager, and how to talk to people and how to communicate and how to convey your ideas. It's just, for me, somebody saw through the letters and the numbers in the CV and saw those soft skills. If I could go back and change it, and it is my advice when I help anybody else with CVs, is I rewrite the CV completely with them, and really help pull out the things that are important.
yeah. I advocate for working on soft skills as well before getting out massively. Because like I said, it was a shock to me when I went into my first role out of the military, and I was like, right, we've got a job to do. Let's crack on and get it done. And
Yeah.
right, you do this and you do this, and if you can get that done by 3, and people look at you like, I don't react to orders, mate. Okay, but I didn't have that experience back then. I do now, thankfully. Um, okay, great. So looking back, Rachel, is there anything that you didn't know then that you know now that you wish you knew as you went through that transition phase to getting out? What
Um,
practical things would you be able to advise people on?
So a couple of things that I learned, and it took me a few years to learn, and I really wish somebody had spelled them out for me a bit earlier, is that in the military, it sounds obvious saying it now, I suppose, but in the military, there are these set goals and set parameters. They make it really clear what good looks like, and everybody's aiming for that same bar. You got to be the loudest, you got to be the fittest, you got to be the this, that, and the other. You've got to be the most obedient, you've got to do this and just be willing, and all the rest of it. They are set bars, set parameters. It's not like that in Civilian Street. The ceiling for success, or the grading for success, is so very different. Things like, are you the most creative? Are you the one that challenges in a different way? Are you the one that can think outside the box? Can you take this and look at it completely differently and translate it and talk about it another way? There are the set box that you put in, it doesn't exist. You can go in any direction, and I think it took me a little while to sort of rest into, like, I don't need to be the top of this ladder. I can actually go and create my own ladder, and I don't need to know what the next 3 steps are here, because actually I might, in 2 years' time, I might be working for a different company that has this value that I now see as important. I can move on, and nobody's going to question my loyalty by not being with the same company after 2 or 3 years. So it's just been a little bit more relaxed about these parameters. And I think the other thing as well, a really valuable lesson, and I often wonder when I hear about service leavers who are struggling a little bit, is nobody told me that it would be up to me to set those parameters going forward. In the military, we had these goals. We had these, you're going to reach here. To be successful, you're going to reach this point of your career and you're going to do this, Y, and Z. And it's not like that in Civvy Street. You've got to set your own goals. You've got to set your own parameters, your own dreams for you to, and it's only you that can push towards those. I feel like some people sometimes are a little bit lost in which direction they're going because nobody says to them, actually, head down, do this for the next 6 years. So, yeah, I think it would have been really helpful for me then, or something that I use as a steer for myself is, okay, what is the next thing I'm aiming for? How am I going to keep myself in check to get there? And I will go push. And it's something I've had to put in myself.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, because in the military, you can pretty much see where your career is going to go. Like, by this time, I should be this rank. By that time, I should be that rank. And once you get into trade, I know the trade I was in, you're already looking 3 years ahead and thinking, that's the posting I want. And then I want that posting. And then I want that posting, and your CRs and whatever, they decide whether you can get on that pathway. But yeah, you can pretty much map out your time years ahead. So, and yeah, as a civvy, I've had to do the same. I've had to be like, where do I want to be? How do I get there? And what do I need to do to get there? There's nobody tapping you on the shoulder saying, come on, mate, another good CR and you'll be an O1 and then you'll get your full screw up. And, nobody's telling you, do this course and we'll get you a project manager role next or anything like that. It's all, all for yourself. So, Rachel, it's been fascinating to speak to you, really. Like I said, I only really had one interaction with Incore. So to get an insight into your background and what you've done since leaving has been fascinating. And thank you so much for sharing all of your advice. It's going to be helpful to lots of people, really.
I really hope so.
Yeah, it will. It will. And it's only by sharing our own stories we can help those who are transitioning out to have a clearer picture of what they might want to do, what steps they can take before even getting out. And I know, there's people say you should think about your, leaving before, whilst you're serving, but we don't. For some reason, we don't. People think it's going to be a forever job, and things happen. Things happen. I
Yeah.
thought I'd be a 22-year career soldier, and it was a lot shorter than that. So that's it. But
Yeah,
great. Listen,
there's plenty that can be done, and I would, for anybody listening, get onto LinkedIn, get yourself a
yeah,
profile, have a dig around, see what's there. There are so many people, so many of my ex-colleagues reach out and help service leavers. There are
yeah,
lots of little groups, lots of little informations. There's evenings where we get together, regional as well, not just in London. There's so much getting on, and really just reach out. They, even in the time I've been out, it's been so long now, but there is a network of people really, really happy to help anybody getting out in any regiment. So just reach out to
definitely.
somebody.
Definitely. And with that said, I will link Rachel's LinkedIn profile in the description. So if you do want to connect with her, pick her brain a little bit more, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to help you all out. Rachel, thanks ever so much again for your time. It's been an absolute
Yeah,
pleasure. And I look forward to staying connected with you on LinkedIn and serving together to help service leavers. Thank
let's
you
do
very
it.
much.
Thank you, Mark. Take care.